Well, everyone, it's actually been about a few years since the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 have actually been out. So I think it's a great time for us to go ahead and pretty much do a re-comparison of these things a few years later, pretty much see where they are. I will tell you straight out the gates, I think everyone knows this by now, I'm definitely not the most, heaviest gamer of all time. I'm not, somebody who's playing a bunch of games. I just am all serious, to be honest. Totally joking. But if you're somebody who has all the money in the world and you don't really care about which one is better, you just want to get up and started, I will definitely tell you there really isn't a clear winner here. Both of these consoles are great. Both of these consoles have issues, not crazy plaguing ones, but I will say you can't really go wrong with either one of these. If you already have a history of playing PlayStation games or you have a history playing Xbox games, then it kind of makes a little bit more sense to probably be involved in that direction. So if you owned an Xbox 360, if you owned an Xbox One, possibly going to the Xbox Series X makes the most amount of sense to me. If you own a PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and you have a history of playing those types of games and you're comfortable in that ecosystem, well, going for the PlayStation 5 probably makes the most amount of sense. But like I mentioned, if you're in the middle and you don't know, or maybe you're a new gamer, then I will hopefully, we can kind of make a little bit of sense of which direction you should go down. Now, pricing wise, in retail prices, they are still, $500, and we haven't seen any price drops. I don't think we're going to be seeing a price drop in retail prices probably for the next 2 years. If we get some sort of S variation and slim variation for these consoles, then possibly I would say that's probably going to happen in the next year or 2 years, but I doubt it. I think it's probably going to be 2 years from now. One of the biggest issues that's still plaguing a lot of these consoles is availability. From my experience, I really think that both these consoles are very similar when it comes down to the availability of both. For a majority of people out there, you can't really go to Best Buy and pick up either one of these consoles. They are still sold out in a ton of different places. For better or for worse, that's really, really bad for a ton of people who want to buy brand new consoles. And that's also bad for people who want to go ahead and buy these consoles in the used market because they're still being sold for quite a bit over the standard price tag. But that's kind of what happens with, resale culture. Now, that is on the one hand of things. They both experience the same problem. They both experience supply chain constraints. But the thing that's going now in 2022 that I noticed is that they are becoming a little bit more available throughout, I would say the last 6-7 months. I've been seeing a lot more news related to these consoles saying, hey, these specific consoles are available at this location and this location, and even a lot of locations around me, they're starting to become a lot more available. If I wanted to go ahead and pick up another Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5, I could realistically buy one, and probably, within a week or two from now, if I really kept my eye on the, availability, I might be able to pick up another one, who knows? So that's one thing you should probably keep your eye on in your local area. But I will say in the used market, they have actually gone down quite a bit as well. So before we get into the performance and everything, they are very similar in that standpoint as well. One of the biggest issues was with the, resale culture and with people buying these consoles and reselling them. Currently, right now, for some reason, the digital edition is the one for the PlayStation 5 that is being sold outrageously more than it really should be, to be honest. But even with both these PlayStation 5s, they are still being sold for relatively, maybe $200 more than, before. Before, when they first came out, they were selling for 5 times more. I would say even up until last year, they were still being sold for twice as much, maybe even 3 times as much as their retail costs. Now it's looking like it's leveling out a little bit, and now they're going around for maybe a couple of $100s more. It looks to me, from the prices that I've seen, PlayStation 5s are still being sold for more than the Xbox Series X. So maybe that's because the Xbox Series X you can probably pick up a little bit easier. So it looks like PlayStation 5s are still being sold out a little bit more, possibly than the Xbox Series X's, but the biggest thing to take away is both of these consoles still are experiencing kind of the same thing, but it looks like the Xboxes are becoming a little bit better when it comes down to the availability of these consoles. So I think that's a really big thing to keep in mind. Now, for the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years that these consoles have been out, they've been experiencing kind of the same things. A lot of the console exclusive games have came out for these things, and they've kind of had a lot of different, responses in terms of criticism and different things like that. Cyberpunk is the one that came to mind. Also, a really big game that's going to be coming out probably in the next few years is GTA 6. So when it comes down to the gaming library of these consoles, consoles, not only can they still play a lot of the previous games from before, such as the PlayStation 5 being able to play almost all of the PlayStation 4 games, the Xbox Series X can play almost all the Xbox One games, and there are certain Xbox 360 and original Xbox games that are also available for that console as well. So the gaming library is massive. But I said this back in 2020 when I originally bought these consoles, and I said I believe that with these consoles, it is going to have probably one of the slowest adoption rates, and it would probably wouldn't even really surprise me that much if the previous consoles that came out would somehow still be relevant even towards the end of the life of the next generation consoles. So even with the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox, One X, I feel like those consoles are so powerful and still so relevant, and because so many people have still not been able to get their hands on the next generation consoles, that those consoles are still going to be relevant even when the Series X and the PlayStation 5 are probably at their end of life. Who knows? I feel like with a game like GTA 6, I don't think that's going to be just coming out for these consoles. I think it's going to also come for the last generation consoles as well. So possibly one thing to keep in mind there. On top of that, when it comes down to the performance of these consoles, I've heard nothing but rave reviews of both of these consoles. The digital version of the PlayStation 5, as we've seen before, it has no performance throttling that the PlayStation 5 has as well. So it's the same power between both. The Series S is a little bit slower and less featureful than the Series X, but that's expected because it's substantially cheaper. They both have 8-core CPUs within them. They both have a little bit of a difference when it comes down to the GPU. The PlayStation 5 has a 10.3 teraflop GPU. The Series X has a 12.0 teraflop GPU. 16 gigabytes of RAM on both these. You can get up to 8K resolution on both. Frame rates up to 120 frames per second. And the optical disc drive, meaning, the DVD player essentially, they both can do 4K UHD videos as well. So when it comes down to both of these consoles in that standpoint, personally, I think they hold up very well when it comes down to the specs and the performance between them. Historically, personally, I haven't really seen crazy differences in terms of the performance between these consoles. And from what a lot of people are stating in terms of the many different subreddits and many different reviews of these consoles for at least like the last year, everything seems to be leveling out. And now that it seems like Microsoft is going to be focusing more on cloud gaming, I will be curious to see what the next generation of consoles are going to be from Microsoft. Is it going to be, an Xbox type of console where they have all the performance and all the CPU, GPU, everything in that one box? Or is it going to be more of like a streaming type of thing? And maybe your console's located in Microsoft servers and you have a little dedicated box there, and your box that you have at your house will call that box there. And from there, you can go ahead and, just play you can just stream your game, library that way. That seems to be a lot of what Microsoft is kind of focusing on. They've talked about this a lot, meaning that they're not trying to be a gaming console company. They're trying to make a gaming company. So we'll see what happens in the future. That would make a lot more sense in terms of the revenue size and, saving money that way. But with PlayStation, I am also curious to see what's going to be happening in the future here too. I always felt like with the design of both these consoles, the PlayStation looked so much better than the Xbox. But I feel like the Xbox, I'm hearing a lot more about. I'm hearing a lot more news. I'm hearing a lot more gaming related stuff with the Xboxes than with the PlayStations. So again, I'm curious to see what happens in the future, but hopefully this kind of breaks down a little bit better for you of which direction you should go. I really don't think there's a clear winner. It really just comes down to which one can you get your hands on. Can you get your hands on an Xbox? Well, then I would probably just recommend getting that. Can you get your hands on a PlayStation? Well, then I just recommend getting your hands on that. But I would not, the biggest thing to keep in mind, I would not recommend going through and spending $1,000 on these consoles. I wouldn't recommend buying one for 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times the price of these things. Makes no sense. They're going to be coming down like they've already been coming down now. And I'd recommend keeping your eye on the used market if you want to buy it there, but that kind of covers it up in my opinion. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.